Well, hello everyone. Welcome once again. It's Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening or late in the night, 8 o'clock for you in England, and 9 o'clock onward, Germany, Poland, Greece, onward and onward. But enough of the time zone count. Hello everyone. Welcome to Satsang. Welcome to 2021. Um, Although, when I think about it, when I really look at it, you know, our days and our calendar and our measurements and all that they're all made up. They're all made up by the mind. There's really no line of demarcation. Nothing's actually counting any days. It used to be just the cycles of the moon, the cycles of the sun, and the first day of the year would actually be the day immediately after the winter solstice, when the sun went back up again, all the way to the sky before it came back down for the death of that year, and then the resurrection of it in the new year. But it's kind of like, boundaries between countries. You can go look for them, but you won't find them. They're just made up on maps. And so much of what we just take for granted, we act out, we embody in our behaviors and in our thoughts and our feelings are just made up. In fact, all of it is. One of the most profound and disorienting, but deeply liberating things you can recognize is that everything you know about yourself, every little tidbit of information you have is wrong. It is a fabrication of the mind. There's an aspect of the human mind, it's not very well understood. I call it the storyteller mind. That's not what they called it when it was first kind of isolated and discovered. And it is this capacity of the human mind, because it does not like a vacuum. It does not like emptiness, nothingness, right? It has to fill it with something. One of the things that I find many people have a hard time dealing with is unknowing, uncertainty. I don't know. And so there's this drive for the mind to try to find things out. Well, the fact of the matter is, and it's a very bizarre thing, but it's actually very true, that make sure my volume is okay here. I don't want it to distort. That if there's a gap in knowledge, the mind will make something up. Just make it up. And not only will it make it up, it actually believes the story that it makes up. Now, the story is an entire fabrication, beginning to end. There's not one bit of truth in it. Right? It is simply the mind generating a story to compensate for the fact that it doesn't know. Because it feels if it knows, it's safe. If it doesn't know, I'm not safe. So rather than being with the unknowing, it makes up a story, literally makes up a story, and in the moment of making it up, actually believes it. Now, what is the number one story that the mind made up? The one story from which all other stories have originated. The one story around which everything else orbits. It's the story of I. It's not knowing who you are, and of course, when you're a child, you don't. But first, you don't care. You're just living, just experiencing, like a dog doesn't know, right? But it's just living. It's just enjoying its life. And as children, that's what we all do. But at a certain point, something happens where we think we need to know who we are. We believe we need to have some kind of a solid idea of myself. And the mind makes it up. Makes it up and believes it. Nothing you know about yourself is true. Everything you know about yourself is a story. It's imagination. It's fabrication. You are not what you think you are. Period. End of story. And a matter of fact, what you are is so vast, so infinite, so magnificent that the mind is incapable of knowing it. Because the mind, in order to know it, know you, has to reduce you down, has to take the infinite and compress it into a skull. This is the reality of how it works. And the spiritual journey is simply recognizing that who you thought you were, you're not, to turn around and start heading back out of the realm of thought and fabrication to what is actually here. And what is actually here? Simply the sense of being, the sense I am. That intuitive, undeniable, unquestionable, self-verifying fact, I am. No other thought is true. Because no other thought, every other thought depends on some other reference point to validate it. And of course, we spend our lives trying to validate ourselves. We spend our life trying to validate this story in our mind that we have about ourselves. We do it in all sorts of different ways, in our relationships, in our careers, the degrees and the certifications that we earn, all an attempt to solidify and give solidity to what in fact was completely made up. But what one thing do you not need any external verification for? In fact, you can't get any external verification for it. What's the one thing? Your own existence. Now, to the mind, that's not very interesting. Yeah, okay, yeah, I exist. So what, right? So what? How's that going to pay the bills, right? How is that going to get me a mate? But when you look at it from the point of view of the existential quest to know who you are, you obviously have to start with something that's actually true. I don't care how well the mathematician applies all of the various laws and axioms and formulas and functions to how completely perfectly they do the entire process. If there's a flaw in the arithmetic, the answer's wrong, right? So this fundamental truth, recognized as the only truth you actually know for sure, the only thing you know for sure. Starting there, you'd have to end up with layers of experience that originate in and generate from truth. Because obviously, any experience that is generated from a story, it's going to have plot twists. It's going to have surprises. Things aren't going to fit because our story of ourselves and reality doesn't match reality. We spend our life trying to take reality and make it fit our model. And if you're somebody who's has a lust for power, you're going to do it through political power or economic power, or you're going to try to get a lot of money, a lot of authority, even become a tyrant. Why? To try to sustain a story that's unsustainable. A story needs to be sustained. It requires an enormous amount of energy to sustain it, doesn't it? A belief requires an enormous amount of energy to perpetuate it. Industry, businesses, politicians spend tens, hundreds of billions of dollars trying to impress upon you a message which is just their opinion. Actually, it's not even an opinion. They don't even care. They're just trying to get you to believe in something so that you'll do what they want you to do. And look how much effort and time and money it takes to do that. Why? Because a falsity requires enormous effort to maintain it. A belief requires my belief in it in order for it to be sustained. The moment my belief in it goes away, it's done. It's over. It has absolutely no more power over me. But the truth, well, that's true whether I believe it or not. It is self-sustained. And only truth is self-sustained. So the truth of you, your truth, or reality, or being, is self-sustained. Think about that. It's self-sustained. And it's true forever. The truth of you will be forever, which means you are forever. And so the spiritual path isn't really trying to become anything, because you're already that. It is a sacrifice, a surrendering to what is true, and being willing to go through the internal process, which is uncomfortable, of aligning thoughts, emotions, and sensations with what is actually true. It's up to us to reconcile ourselves to God, not the other way around. We reconcile ourselves to the truth. And that's also the redemption, that is the resurrection, that is the born againness, that is the day of Pentecost, that is enlightenment. So welcome again to Satsang. I'm going to go now and take a look, see what people are interested in, what they would like to ask me today. I know we're going to get a lot of Happy New Year's, Happy 2021s on the list here. So let's see, Rosario, you were here first. Congratulations. Very good. Best wishes to you all. Brian in Virginia, John in Ireland, David and Elaine, Southeast England. Happy New Year to you guys. Ava, best wishes. John Watson in Glasgow. Lisa F. Feliz Año Nuevo. Nuevo. Learning how to say a V in Spanish with a proper Spanish accent. It's not easy. But Happy New Year to you. Daryl and in DC. Sarah in France. Hello. Great to see you. I'm better. I've reserved a session. Good. Mary Sykes in Niagara Falls. Not in the falls itself, but the town, right? Yeah, I'm assuming you're not in the falls. Jay, hey Jay. Namaste, everyone. Goodbye to all the good and bad of 2020. Welcome 21 with all your surprises. And it will be a surprise. Oh, wow. Season's greetings from Russell. Hello, Russell in Durban, also in Ireland, right? Yeah. Penny in BC. Dale. Hello, Dale in Massachusetts. Red rose for me. When I was 3 years old, I remember asking myself, who am I? And I said, well, I am me, But then who am I? And I said, who cares? Look at you jumping with joy in the car's back seat. I felt two in me, I guess. Yes. Actually, I think everybody, when you're a child, because you're in between, you haven't, right, you're beginning to acclimate to the body, for one thing, right? In the beginning, you can't even get your hand into your mouth, right? You're getting used to this machine that you're running. You know, the way you have to learn how to fly an airplane or ride a bike. You know, you have to get used to this because this is an instrument, just like the bike or the car, right? And then this period in between where you're in it, you're not yet identified with it. You've not yet actually become a separate self, a body in a world, right? And there's this point in here where it's like things are really wide open to ask and that question does come up. I remember as a little kid, about the same age, 3 or 4, pondering death. What is death? My grandfathers are dead before I was born. It was probably around that time. Maybe a cat died or something. But I just tried to imagine me not existing. Right? Now, of course, I didn't have those words at the time, right? I didn't really, I couldn't really articulate, but I was just trying to really put a lot of energy in it. It was amazing because every time I'd into this nothingness, guy, no, I'm still here. I'm still here. Right? And I think everyone has experiences like that when they're little. I think we just forget them because we get so completely absorbed in the sense of identity. The sense of identity creates a whole story about our past. The fact of the matter is, you have no direct evidence you were born at all. Isn't that something to ponder? You have no memory of it. That's hearsay. Your parents told you about it. The time when she was pregnant and it was this and wonderful and all that, and you came home from the hospital and they told you all that. Right? You have no actual memory of being born. So how do you know it actually even happened? From a direct perspective, you don't. And of course, you cannot step out of the present and go back and visit, now objectively and say, was that? Oh, yeah, okay, there I was being born. It's an utterly fascinating and liberating thing to ponder your own birth and your own death. Death is even more interesting, right? Because death is the end of all the crap you've accumulated over the years. Everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, the wonderful, the disastrous, all going to vanish. That's why in spiritual circles, they would talk about dying before you die. That's what it means. What it means is that realizing in advance that everything you cherish now and everything you fear is going to simply vanish in an instant. Why not let it go now? Just have the experience of it, but don't hold on to it because you can't. It will be gone. The love of your life will be gone. Your fortunes, they'll be gone. Your fame, gone. Prestige, power, position, gone. Why not let it go now? Let go of everything that you hold on to, everything that you aspire to, good and bad, attachments and aversions. Let them all go because they're going to go anywhere. Anyway, what's left? What's left will be what you cannot let go of. And another way of putting that, probably much more from the heart rather than just saying letting go, surrender. Surrender to the truth of being. Right? Surrender to God. Give up every thought to God. As Anthony de Mello said quite beautifully, enlightenment is total surrender to the inevitable. There's some people actually, when they die, they have their heads cut off and frozen. So someday they may get another body. Oh my God, how absurd. How utterly silly. Talk about just totally attached to life as a body. At some point, they're going to get, it'll be a 25-year-old body. They're not imagining getting another, 80-year-old body, but that would look kind of weird, the 80-year-old head stuck. But I guess they want to take the brain out and put in, anyway, I'm just kind of going off on the silliness of it. But the child bouncing on the back seat, just enjoying life as it is, the pure joy of this moment, dancing, and jumping, and like the feeling of jumping, is purely in the now. And there's this transition point, the moment of separation for most of us does not come like that. For me, it did. I even remember it, right? Because it was just an extreme trauma. Right? For most, it's more gradual. And then suddenly it's almost as if you're not even thinking about it, and there's this sense of identification with the body. Because your parents are constantly reinforcing it. This is you. This is not you. Right? Oh, okay. So that me, that sense of being a me, right, starts looking for, okay, that's not me. Well, then what am I? And of course, immediately it goes, oh, I'm the body. I'm a boy. I'm a girl. I'm little. They're big. I'm afraid. Right? That's where the fear comes from. Anyway, there wasn't actually a question there, but it just kind of sparked an idea for me about that. Meditating on one's own death is a very profound Buddhist meditation. Meditating on death. Matter of fact, that was the doorway for Ramana Maharshi, one of the greatest sages of all time. When he was struck with a sense of terror, he was only 16, 17 years old. He was alone. I think it was an uncle's house. And he suddenly was just struck with this incredible existential terror, fear of death. And he said, okay, I'm dying. And he just completely surrendered to that death. Just going through, what's left, nothing. He surrendered even his life, surrendered to oblivion. And what happened? The heavens parted. And he saw the immortality of life, of his true self. Not the one that was laying there on the floor in terror. That one was gone forever. That one died. This is the deeper meaning of the crucifixion, the resurrection, and all of it. But I'm digressing. I got to make sure I don't get behind on questions for the new year. Snizalia, good to see you in Serbia. Dale in Massachusetts. Kiran, hello, namaste to you. Robert Hill, best wishes. Thank you. Where are we? Sally Atherton in England, also Southeast England. After this whole pandemic thing is over, you need to go visit David and Elaine. Of course, I don't know how close they are. Southeast England isn't that small. Ivan in Bulgaria. Himank, namaskaram ji, namaskaram to you. Once truth has been realized, where to go from there on? Well, first off, once it's realized, there won't be any place to go. There won't be a sense of there's something I have to do, right? Now I've got the realization, now I have to implement it. It's not like a piece of knowledge which you gain and then you have to practice with it and apply it. somewhere, right? Right. And in fact, the question, where do I go from here, won't even arise. You're there. Where is there to go? Now, at that point, life happens by itself. You're not doing anything, right? But the body is, right? It's not like you're just sitting around, you know, completely blank. You are still doing, but there's no sense of a doer. There's just a happening. Life is happening. Consciousness is manifesting itself. Right? The emptiness, which you are, is constantly producing new forms, which is the way you appear. So the you will not be somebody trying to do something anymore or needing to do something anymore. Right? It will be the absolutely still, motionless awareness. And you can discover that right now. Isn't awareness motionless? Just look, you're aware right now. Is that awareness moving at all? Is it doing something? Or is its very nature of awareness, there's nothing for it to do. It just is being aware. So you're not doing that, right? You don't need to. It's simply the nature of being itself. You are the awareness, right? Which is me. You are aware-ing. I wish there was a verb form for awareness, you know, to be aware. So I'm awareing. Okay? So it's simply what's happening right now. If there was no awareness, you wouldn't be hearing my words. You wouldn't be seeing the computer. You wouldn't be able to type anything. Right? The only problem is that we're so used to thinking of ourselves in terms of the doing and the happening that we miss the awareness of it. The awareness of it is you, and that doesn't need to do anything. And in that comes the freedom. Now, when the mind thinks about that, it thinks, oh, nothing's going to happen then, because the mind thinks you're doing it. Right? The fact of the matter is, everything is going to happen just the way it is. The sun will come up, birds will chirp, people will fall in love, everything will continue just as it is. And you realize you've never been doing it ever. It's never been a personal activity. It's always been just a happening. And now you're liberated from the personal sense of it, which means you're eliminated from the personal responsibility for it. Blame, shame, guilt, gone. Ambition, aspiration, gone. Because what you have aspired to is complete. You're there. You are at the point of the infinite road. And then you simply are watching the magnificent beauty of the unfoldment of life. And then the entire world is simply your body. The entire universe is your body. And just like this body, you don't have to do anything to make it work. It's going all by itself. Even your thoughts are just happening by themselves. You think you're thinking of them, but you're not. They're just happening. Everything is just happening. So just like this body is just happening, and thank God, because imagine if you cognitively had to try to make this all work. We can barely walk and chew gum at the same time. Imagine trying to beat your heart, keep the temperature, right? Grow hair and fingernails, blink. I mean, imagine thousands and thousands of processes and functions that are going on all the time, completely without your intervention. And if you do try to intervene, you actually mess it up. We try to force it into something, we mess it up, because the cognitive part isn't doing it. The only purpose of our cognitive part is not to plan, to strategize, or to control. The only reason it's there is so we can ponder our own nature. So we can recognize the fact this is all happening by itself. Well, then who am I? That's the only reason it exists. I'm not here for doing anything. It's here to ponder yourself. It is the capacity of consciousness to be self-aware. So use it for what it was made for. Right? And then you discover that just like this, the body is doing everything all by. Your whole life has been simply the happening. And then you can completely let go of everything and enjoy the ride. Right? You get to experience it, but with none of the burden, none of the suffering. Oh, thank you, Himank. Man. Mar Delaney in Dublin. Hello to you. Mark C. So good to see you, GP. Same to you, Mark. So good to see you. Robert Hill. I had such a stressful December. I started smoking again after I stopped for 8 months. Feeling guilty and disappointed in myself. The devil in me got me again. Okay, so stop again. Right? You know, our bodies get really attached to habits, right? And something like smoking and actually drinking as well, because they so easily get intertwined and associated with our everyday life, right? That the actual struggle with it isn't the physical addiction itself, because it's like 3 days to 2 weeks, the craving for alcohol is actually diminished to almost nothing. That is the physical body's wanting it. The body adjusts that quickly. I don't know what it is for the physical addiction to nicotine, but I think it's a similar time frame. It's not long. And then after that, it's purely psychological and behavior. Okay? And of course, when we get into a situation that is overly stressful, beyond what we know, there's going to be this enormous push of the body to reach for the sedative that it had reached to so many times before. Right? And at that point, you may stumble and fall. Right? No, but the best way to approach it is to recognize that what you're dealing with is a well-trained system within the body. It's not you, it's not your choice, but it's a well-trained system. So it's even going to take away all of the it's going to take away, you're going to find yourself going, well, I don't really want to stop. Right? Of course, it's not you at all. It's part of the psychological process. Right? You learned how to ride a bike. Most of us here did. Probably all of us here did, right? Learned how to ride that bike. Let's say you didn't ride the bike for 10 years. Would you have to learn all over again? Or would you get right, if you got on it, you immediately know how to do it? You may not be able to do tricks, right? But you'd be able to get on that bike and go somewhere, wouldn't you? Because your body has so practiced it that it's in there. All of our addictions work exactly the same way, right? And it's so well practiced, right? As they say for alcoholics, one drink is too many, 10's not enough. Right? That first drink, you actually have some input whether you're going to take it or not. After that, the nervous system takes over, and you probably won't be able to do less than what you normally do. Right? So the first thing is notice that the guilt and shame that it brings up is actually part of the energy that the smoking was sedating in the first place. So I'm going to invite you first to sit with that guilt and shame. Right? Don't fight it. Don't push it away. Right? To actually be with it. Surrender to it. Let it be there. Let go of it. When I say let go, I don't mean let it go. Right? Of course you would let it go, but in order to let it go, you first have to let it come. When I say let go, I mean take your hands off of it. You know, if you're let's say you're sitting in water, right, in a pool or something, and you're trying to hold a beach ball underwater. Right, it takes a lot of energy, doesn't it? Right? If you let go of it, right, it immediately bounces to the surface. Right? Now that beach ball may sit right there for a while. It might not go any. It may float off. It may come back, bounce into you a bit, right? But then it floats off again. Right? If you stay in that water long enough, a year, 10 years later, it might just come bouncing back again. But if you don't have any grip on it, and the grip is, I'm ashamed of it, that's all part of the way in which you hold on to it, let go of it. Simply, okay, this guilt is here. Right? I'm just going to choose to be with it. I'm not going to push it away. I'm not going to grab it. I'm not going to respond to it. I'm not going to act it out. I'm not going to do anything to try to compensate for it. I'm neither going to suppress it, nor express it, nor sedate it. And when you're sitting there, it'll be very uncomfortable at first, but after a while, because you're not feeding it, it will dissipate. And with it, a lot of the internal pressure. And you do exactly the same thing when that feeling comes up. Right? You do that feeling that I'm going to smoke again. And you do the same thing when the stress comes up. Because what's the stress? The stress is simply the way we're reacting to circumstances. Right? And stress gets to a certain high level, and it has to be diffused. We got to pull the steam pipe and let some of the steam off. We have to. Right? So what's the best way to do it? Be with it. Allow it. Right? Surrender to it. Right? Just be fully present. That will actually diffuse it. It doesn't empower it. Exactly the opposite. It won't feel like that when you first do it. Right? It'll feel, my God, this is worse. This is worse than ever. And it could get even more intense because it's trying to force you into the habitual behavior. So you just be with it. And this works for every single addiction there is. Right? So it's okay, dude. You stumbled. So what? Right? It doesn't affect who you are. It doesn't affect the quality of your character. Right? It's nothing to be guilty about. This is the nature of the human nervous system. This is the way it works. Right? And you just happen to pick up a powerfully addictive, mind-altering drug that sedated something, and at the time, it was the only resource you had available to you. Right? But of course, it becomes a thing in and of itself. Well, now you don't need it anymore. Right? You have all the tools that you need. So how's that, Robert? Is that helpful? Cheryl in Pennsylvania, hello to you. Red rose for me. My brother's wife is very ill with cancer. I pray and set the intention for her to heal, but then I think, do I let it go? Or if I pray, can the outcome change? I resist letting go because I feel maybe I can help her. The letting go does help her, right? Because one of the things you can let go of, this is subtle, right? But it really is an advanced form of healing. What you let go of her is the image you have in your mind of a sick person, of a person who could die. Banish that from your thinking, because that's not who she is. Right? That allows you to simply let go of what the circumstances are, because the circumstances aren't actually that important. Who she is can never die. It can never be sick. So something's happening, fine, right? Don't identify her with that. Right? You can't go in and switch somebody else's mind up. But the image we hold of someone else, oof, that's our responsibility. Right? I can completely abandon my belief in a sick person. Because the reality is, what do I know? I have this image in my mind. I think this image in my mind is what the truth is, don't I? So what if it isn't? What if is this the story in your head? Now, this is subtle, I know, and it may seem a bit confusing, but just trust me on this. Right? Let go of every idea you have of her being sick, for having some illness that has been diagnosed and now branded. Of course, the moment it's branded and diagnosed, all of the fear, right? The huge fear of the C word, right? Is suddenly everywhere. So the mind is all over this with all sorts of terrible things. Step out of that flow of energy of the mind and step into the place where Christ lived from. This is how he healed. For him, he saw nothing but God. And in that energy field, absolutely nothing else could be allowed. And so what appears to be an actual physical illness is in fact a mental state. And where do we meet that mental state? You can't meet it in somebody else because all you're dealing with is what you think they are. You have to deal with it here. I actually did a course, God, I think about 2 or 3 years ago called the Advanced Healing Arts. And it was all about this, to take it into yourself. And if this might seem a bit weird to you, it's actually the basis of metaphysical healing. It's also the basic of Ho'oponopono. That's what he did. He did not, the guy who rediscovered it and made it available after the fact, he started out in a mental institution with the worst violent criminals there were. And every other director of that facility had quit. Everything was just always worse. He got the job, and he'd go into his office in the morning. He'd come out at the end of the day. They go, what are you doing? He never met with the patients. He never talked to them. But all of a sudden, all the violent behavior started falling away, to the point where after a couple of years, there was nobody left in the place. It was empty. What did he do? He took it on himself, just like Christ took on the sins of the world. Right? It's been immortalized in those 4 phrases that people associated with it. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. So he looked at every single tragedy that was the life of these guys. He went through each one of their individual files, took complete responsibility for holding an image of them that was less than perfect. And he said, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. He took it to himself. Thank you. I love you. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. But we're so used to thinking of the body as being preeminent, and maybe it's affected by thought, but it's the ultimate arbiter. Mind is. So let go of it. It may not be easy, but try. See what happens. You will first come to a sense of peace. And in that peace, you can just let go, right, of how it manifests in the world, when it manifests in the world. Because the underlying cause of any illness is not the illness. It's not physical, it's not genetic, it's none of that. It's energetic. Right? And the actual healing, the real liberation from the energetic pattern, maybe 2 or 3 lifetimes down the road. It's not up for you to decide how it happens. Just for you, it's over. It's a done deal. There is no sick person. And you just stop believing in them. And the effect it'll have will be profound, but it will affect you first. Don't go looking for some kind of proof of it. Be the proof of it. And the rest will take care of itself. Does that help? Red Rose, for you? It's maybe a new idea for a lot of you guys as well. Andrew Robinson, hello to you. John, hey, GP, we are life. We don't have a life. Is this correct? Yes. Yeah. The idea that there's me and then life. It's kind of like people saying me and the universe. What do you mean? Is the universe everywhere except here? Isn't this the universe? Aren't I not the universe? Right? Yes, it's an individual manifestation of the universe, but in me is the entire universe. Every aspect of the universe is in this one form. The universe is my body. So life is everywhere except right here. So there's me and I have this life, right? It's like me, my soul, right? I have a soul. Well, then who are you? What is the soul? And when the soul, my immortal soul goes to heaven, well, then where do you go? I'm just going to lay in the dirt, right? But this is the mind word. This is the natural separation of the mind because it's trying to define itself in terms of and separate from everything else. So then there's a universe and then there's me. No, this is the universe. This is the universal theme of being, manifesting itself in countless number of ways. So yes, we don't have a life, you are life. And beyond life, because you're the witness of life, aren't you? But you witness it intimately, not like a movie or something. You're right in the midst of it. 3D, visceral, five senses. The entire immersion. And we're talking about VR on steroids. So, does that answer it for you, John? John Watson, how do you let it go now? Surrender? Yes. It starts simply with an intention to do it. Yeah, that's the whole of it. Oh, I completely forgot about my tea. Elderberry today. How do I let go? Right? Well, you just want to. That's all. If you want to and you have an intention to, that intention will guide the whole energy system to the point where it will do that. But it's a simple recognition, right? If you recognize that every feeling that comes, everything that comes up is just a feeling. Every thought that arises is just a thought. Right? Suddenly it's not so pressing, it's not so important. And a certain level of compassion and equanimity begins to arise, so that a feeling that arises that's uncomfortable or unpleasant, right, is no longer seen as an enemy you have to get rid of. I gotta get rid of this. Is horrible. Right? Although sometimes that's actually a useful strategy, so that you can actually see that some things that we've indulged our time in aren't actually serving us. We think we're getting something and we're not. But eventually you get to a place of equanimity. Oh, it's just a feeling. It's an old feeling. It was installed in me before I had any choice. Right? It's innocent. It's not to blame. It's just the nervous system doing what it does. So I'll just let it be there. And in that sense of equanimity, you create an inner environment of safety. And in the inner environment of safety, those feelings transform. They can't help it. Because the nature of everything the nervous system does is adapt. It simply adapts to the environment. You shift the inner environment, it will shift. Right? Sometimes you can just say, you know what? I give it to God. I don't know what to do with it. On one hand, I don't want it to be here, and I acknowledge that feeling. Right? But it's here. I acknowledge that as well. Right? Right? And I can't get rid of it. I'm actually powerless to get rid of it. I've tried everything I've tried. Right? So I'm going to let go of trying to get rid of it in any way I can, in all the different ways, because there are different ways, right? I'm going to fix myself. I'm going to transform myself. I'm going to reprogram myself. I'm going to think differently. Um, I'm going to fix it, right? I'm going to reframe it. I'm going to transcend it. All of which are an attempt to get away from what's actually here. What happens if you just show up present with what is here? What happens? That's what you want to find out. Just, okay, it's here. I'm going to drop all my argument with it. I'm going to surrender to its presence. And when I say surrender to it, I don't mean you surrender to the whole mechanism, because the feeling comes up and there's an automatic response that has been programmed and practiced over time that is going to want you to behave in a certain way as a response to that. You don't surrender to that. You surrender to the sheer presence of the feeling, the presence of the sense of everything that goes along with it. The feeling, there'll be thoughts, there'll be stories, a whole narrative about it. There'll be a plan of action, right? Oh, this feeling, I've got to do this. You're going to watch the entire thing. And you're going to surrender to this moment, right? And simply allow it to be there, unmovable. That's what this really represents. Not I'm trying to get rid of it, but I'm just going to remain unmovable in the presence of it. That's actually the scene of Buddha under the Bodhi tree, when he had decided, after his period of austerity, and he realized it didn't work, he said, I'm going to sit here and I'm not getting up until I have the answer to suffering. And he sat there. And storms came. First thing he had to deal with was fear. No, first thing was desire, right? Desire came first. Maya and his daughters came to tempt him. He didn't move. He did not move, didn't budge, didn't speak. He stayed right with it, trying to get him to do something. After that, it was desire, right? Like for Christ, the third temptation of Christ. The whole world will be yours. Just kind of bow down and worship me. But Buddha was unmovable. A storm was sent, right? And it said by the time the storm arrived, it was a warm breeze. Right? Rains came, and a huge cobra came up and covered him with his hood. He wouldn't move. He wouldn't budge. It wasn't just his physical sitting there. He was internally, he was not budging from this position. He was still Siddhartha at that point, by the way. Right? And you see the statues of him, and you'll see one hand might be like this or like this. The other hand it goes off the camera, but it was down on his leg, touching the earth, rooting himself here, in the here and now, in this moment, in the presence, in the body, and it happened. The sky parted. Siddhartha died, and the Buddha was born. This is what you do. What you're doing. This is the sacredity of this moment. When you're sitting there, I'm just not going to budge. Let it come. There's no antagonism. There's no irritation. There's no, geez, are you going to be here forever? You're right here in the now. It's here now. Might not be there in 5 minutes. Right? May come back. Who cares? Don't move. Does that help, John? Andrew. The more I let go of the past, the fresher everything feels each day. Yes, it really does feel like I'm experiencing whatever it is for the first time. It's a nice feeling. That's because you are experiencing it for the first time. When we experience through the lens of the past, we experience the past. An event happens, it triggers the response in the body and then the mind, which then takes this event, interprets it through past events, and now has an interpretation, a perception, an experience, not of what actually happened, but of the memory of it. It's a very subtle thing. It happens so fast we don't even notice it. But this is the way the mind works. The mind is never in the present moment. It's always in the past or the future. It's always remembering and projecting the memory on this moment, or projecting it into the future, anticipating what might happen based on what did. So I always use the example of you're walking through the park. It's springtime, right? Oh, it smells so good. And all of a sudden you spot, a flower has bloomed that you've never seen before. You're just taken aback. Oh my God, the beauty of it. In that moment, the past is gone. The future is gone. It's a pure experience of that flower in this moment right now. This completely extraordinary, unique, in all time moment. And you'll be there. And it may last a second, it may last a little bit longer. Just that, I call it the power of wow. Just everything stops. Mind is gone. You're not there. Mind's not there. It's just the flower. And then shortly thereafter, maybe almost immediately, the mind will go, what a beautiful flower. My God, that's incredible. God, I love that flower. Look at that. Isn't that? I wonder what kind of flower that is. Wow, is that like a mum of some kind? Boy, I'm not quite sure what that is. But I think I saw them. They had them on sale at Safeway or Fred Meyer. All right, you're not there anymore. You're in the memory of the flower. You're looking at the Kodak moment now. You're looking at the YouTube video. You're not looking at the flower. This is the way it happens. Okay? This is how we get out of the now. All right. I think I've told you all before, when I go to an art museum, I never take the tours. And I never get, I get that little thing to guide me along. Because if I do, I know what I'll be doing is I'll be experiencing the art. I won't be experiencing it. I'll be experiencing the story about it, the history, where it came from, and all these kinds of things. Right? So instead, I'll just sit there in front of it to take it in as a pure experience. I did that once a year. I'd make my pilgrimage to the Dali Museum. I lived in Miami Beach. There's a Dali Museum. It's the second largest Dali museum in the world. I'm a big fan of Dali. In St. Petersburg. So once a year, I'd make the 6-hour trek up there to spend the day just sitting in front of these incredible masterpieces. And I gain information along the way, what he did. He'd sit in the chair, and he actually cut a hole in the floor. He rented 2 apartments, one above each other, in New York City, in a Chelsea hotel, I think. And he cut a hole in the floor, right? And put pulleys and stuff, so he could just sit in his chair, because he was making this 10-foot painting, and he just lowered down and he paint, and they bring it back up, and you never move from the chair. Interesting story, right? But it's fascinating. But if I take that to the painting, then I'll be seeing him in the chair. I won't be seeing the painting. Right? And that's when the real wow takes place. That's when the power of wow overwhelms you. So yeah, the past is never fresh. How can it be? It's the past. And the mind, again, like I said in the beginning, the mind's always making up a story. The story it makes up now is based on the story of the past. It grabs the information of the past, it looks at it, oh, I know what that is, identifies it, gives it a name, grabs memories, puts it together, and before you know it, you're looking at a perception and not reality. You want to look at reality. And as you said, if you start just letting go of the past, right? Which is simply being in this present moment, the power of now, as Eckhart made his whole career on that, right? Just being in this present moment, you find every moment is absolutely unique. It's fresh constantly. It has no relationship to the past. The past is gone, it's irrelevant. This is what it means to truly be awake to this moment and awaken in general. Anyway, thank you for that, Andrew. Himank, the question was asked in the context that doesn't a responsibility arise to give back to society. That involves making others aware about the truth. I understand the egoistic implications of the question, though. More of a tendency than a responsibility. If it's a responsibility, it's the ego. It's the ego trying to be, oh, I have this knowledge now, I need to share it with the world. Right? When it's truly awake, it will just happen. Or it might not. You may have heard me mention Steve Jourdain. It's a fascinating book. You can get it. It's called Radical Awakening, and it's conversations with Steve Jourdain. And like Ramana Maharshi, at the age of 16, went through a similar kind of thing, not about death, it was slightly different, but completely and totally woke up. Now, Ramana, picked up and left home, went off to Tirunamvalai, and sat in the temples, and eventually, he became the world-known guru. Right? It just kind of happened. He didn't speak for a long time. Who knows the story? Steve Jourdain, on the other hand, didn't. He never became a guru. He never became a teacher. He said, my family felt sorry for me because I really couldn't do much. He went to school, right? He's actually a phenomenal writer, unbelievable vocabulary, but he writes in French. So you might enjoy it, Sarah. Maybe there's the French version of it. Brilliant with language, but he never became a teacher. His family felt sorry, gave him a work at real estate. He said, I made $1 my first year. But he never, I'm sure most all of you have never heard of him. Because he didn't. Matter of fact, to the day he died, I mean, he owned like a bed and breakfast in some island somewhere. He did a variety of things. But he never, ever became a teacher. People found out about him and went to see him, and he would have conversations with him, right? But he never officially did it. And yet, if you read the account and the conversations with him, you have no doubt this was a fully enlightened master. So it's not a responsibility. You don't have a responsibility to pay back, to give something back. You're just overwhelmed with such a sense of love. It just overflows. But you don't even have to say anything. Most of the time, Ramana didn't speak. People would just come, sit in his presence, and that was it. It was just his presence. So you don't need to do anything. You can become a barista at Starbucks or one of these little drive-in places, right? Doesn't matter. At that point, it doesn't matter, right? You are truth, right? And therefore, your very presence is truth. So there's no sense of responsibility for it. If there is, hold back, step back. Wait a second. I don't have to do anything. What says I have to do something? As a matter of fact, the last temptation of the Buddha was social responsibility. The last one of Christ was, of power, wealth, desire, basically. The last one of the Buddha was social responsibility. You're great. You're awake now. You're fully enlightened. It's time to go back and be the great king your father always wanted you to be. Responsibility. You have so much wisdom now. You need to give it to your people. He didn't buy it. Thank God. Right? Then maybe we'd have some. We probably would never have heard of him. Locally, In India, they may, be some legends about some great king, right? Some very wise king, right? Like Solomon or something like that, right? But we wouldn't have the Buddha. Kiran, do we still need to have a vision for our life if we're walking the awakened path? That is your vision. That is your vision. The vision of your life is to awaken fully to the truth. That is your vision. Do you mean you need to have some other thing that turns you on, that, some other thing I'm supposed to do? No, you don't need that. But once again, if there's one there, you don't push it away. That's what it means to allow and surrender. If something arises to be done, you feel into it, right? Do I feel I have to do this? Do I feel like this is my calling or something like this? Or is this just something very naturally and spontaneously arising? You didn't choose to walk on the awakened path, right? You may think you did, but you didn't, right? That choice was made, right? It just appeared. The choosing thought, the choosing impulse, your attention just naturally started gravitating towards these things, right? You didn't choose that; it just happened, right? So the same thing is true about the rest of it, right? You're walking the path. I mean, you got to do something, right? So do something. So what is it? A vision for your life? No, the only vision for your life is to see life as it actually is, to be life. Right? I don't need a vision for life if I am life, because that means everything I do is a vision for life. Every step I take, every vow I break, everything I do, every little thing I do is the vision of my life. That's my life, right? So it doesn't become this great, I've got to, it's like, well, right now, okay, it seemed like a big deal because I'm sitting here and I'm teaching satsang. I'm in satsang, right? But what do I do when this is over? I disconnect the mic. I put it away. Maybe I'll get another cup of tea, right? I'll probably have to pee really badly and I'll go to the bathroom, right? Is that part of the vision? Yeah. That's life, the embrace of the fullness of life, right? The mind really wants to romanticize things and turn everything into this big deal, and it's nothing. It's nothing to do with that. You can't help but be living and doing exactly what this life was meant to be and do. Like everything else, you don't have it, like all the other bodily functions, the functions of life, our destiny, the things we do, they're all happening. They're already happening. We just think we're doing it. And somehow, if I don't have this vision and I don't go after it, it's not going to happen. It's not true. And the people who think because they've had this vision and they've made their goals and they've gone after it, that because of all of that, they have attained that vision. It had nothing to do with any of that. The unfolding of doing this or that, or even the ultimate unfolding of some kind of vision or variation on it, had nothing to do with your actions. All the actions were spontaneously arising. This is the great insight. I've never done anything. I've never said anything. I've never made anything. It is all just happened, arising out of the infinite energy and the infinite beauty of the self. How's that, Karan? Himank, on second thought, maybe others don't exist. They're part of the ever-continuing dream. Yes, but don't take that on too early, because that can actually cause you to become, when the ego hears that, it becomes indifferent. Okay? when the true self, right, recognizes that reality, right, it isn't just that there aren't any others. That's the wisdom way of looking at it. There, to know you are wisdom, to know you are nothing is wisdom, right? But the other side of it, to know you are everything, is love. And now relationship with the imagined other is actually relationship with yourself, because they are the same. They are of the same essence. It's a different face on the same soul. And so you would treat them the way you treat yourself, as Christ put it, right? Do unto others as they would, as you do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Boy, if we just followed that simple thing, that should be in every court, in in the Pentagon, in every government around the world. That should be all over the place. Do unto others as we would have them do unto us. There could never be another war if we followed that. And it doesn't have a precondition on it, right? He didn't say, do unto others as they would, as you would have them do unto you. Unless, of course, they do something bad to you, then do back what they did. He didn't do that. No matter what, even if they kill you, you still treat them the way you'd want to be treated, even if they don't treat you that way. The demands of Christ are way more than we want to turn them in. Well, I'll do that, but yeah, but if he hits me, I'm going to hit him back, right? The eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth, trying to make it seem like that had anything to do with the teachings of Christ. Tomas in Poland. Hello, sir. Hello, Roberto. IGPN bunch. Anna. Hello, Anna from Croatia. Good to see you, Anna. Andrew. Oops, what happened? Wow. The advice to Red Rose agrees entirely with a Neville Goddard video I saw today. He said, imagine seeing your sick friend and saying, did you finish it somewhere, Andrew? Oh, okay. He doesn't look like he finished. Okay, good enough. Yeah, well, Neville Goddard kind of grew out of that same tradition, which is also known in the New Thought churches. The Course in Miracles grew out of that same thing, and it goes all the way back to the late 19th century, and Christian Science, which then gave rise to Unity, and the Science of Mind, which then became the Centers for Spiritual Living, which then gave rise to Michael Beckwith and Agape. It's that line of thinking, and Neville was one of those. Joel Goldsmith. There's several people, because I think Neville Goddard, was I think it was in the 70s. I think he died in the 70s or 80s. So that period of time, and I got educated in that point of view. That's why I know it, and why I know it actually works. Right? It doesn't go all the way, but this is exactly how it works. If we completely take it in within my own consciousness, and I take seriously the idea that nothing exists outside of my consciousness, then how I view it in my consciousness determines my entire experience of it. And that is not just, so I'm not going to experience them that way, but they're going to be that way. That makes us think that there's this other dimension outside. It's all within consciousness. Take ownership of that. You get access to the heart of humanity, and you can heal anything. But you're not dependent. The healing takes place in the recognition in consciousness. You're not dependent upon something out here happening. You let that go. In fact, early on, I think it was about 24, I had learned these techniques. It was after my night on the bridge, right? I had learned these techniques of healing, and I was actually praying for somebody. That's what the praying in that tradition is. And basically, I kept, every time my mind would want to check, have they gotten better yet? Has nothing. They're not there. There is nothing outside of here. Whatever I think is all there is. And I just must have concentrated on that, I think about a half an hour. I was just absolutely dogged about it. And all of a sudden, everything just broke open. There was nothing else but God. Nothing else literally existed. I don't even remember if the person I was praying for, because I actually used to practice, as a healer, I don't remember what happened. I was so overwhelmed by it. So anyway, Yeah. Trust me on this. Penny, Sifu, you said it beautifully. Once love something, truth discerns, referring to the two snake intertwined upward. Do you mind? You said it beautifully once. Love something, truth discerned, referring to the two snakes intertwined upward. Do you mind sharing again? Well, hopefully this is what you had in mind, Penny. I'm not sure, but it's like Jean-Luc Picard. uh, you Star Trek fans, so we'll get that. The two snakes refer to the Kundalini model of the chakras, right? Where the seven points, the seven vortexes, and that sort of thing. Which I don't teach that way. I don't teach them as actual physical things. I teach them as aspects of consciousness. But that's beside the point. We see a lot of images now. They're very popular of the person meditating with the lights, but they leave off the traditional way in which that model was presented. And there's the Kundalini rising, but around it are two snakes intertwined. Now, to us in Western culture, the snake is this horrible thing, right? It deceived us in the Garden of Eden. The problem, blah blah blah, right? And the same thing with dragons, which are another form of the snake, or reptiles and of any kind. And we even have a phobia of snakes and things like that. Whereas in the East, the snake didn't represent that at all. The snake was an archetype for immortality, because the snake shed its skin and became a completely new creature, a rebirth. And so the intertwined snakes around the column of light as the Kundalini rises, right? It isn't just a Kundalini, physical Kundalini going through the body. People who believe that end up really messing themselves up. They get this rush of energy and no capacity to deal with it. What it represents is the evolving of consciousness from the purely unconscious, the instinctual, to the spiritual, the fully conscious. In the book of Genesis, it's depicted as God calling forth from the waters the dry land. Right? The waters represent the unconscious, the dry land represents consciousness. And so this rising is the immortality. It's the death and the resurrection. And the crossover part, the crossover moment, the key to the transcending of the purely animal or instinctual or unconscious is the heart. That's why it's the center. It's the crossover point. But it's also the point where the lesser is not abandoned, right? It's subsumed, right? The physical isn't dismissed, as many spiritual people do. I did for a long time, right? Until you realize that it's simply a different aspect of exactly the same energy. But it's just that the finiteness of my consciousness had been so identified and embroiled in it that that's all there was. And if that's all there is, then I am its finiteness. I am its mortality, because the body's mortal, right? It's constantly mortal. Every cell in your body is turning over, right? Even the longest ones last, I think the latest thing I read about or heard about it was like 15 years. Before I think it was like 7 is what I heard, but no, looks like it's longer. So we go through multiple bodies. Some organs turn over in a matter of days. Entire organs, your pancreas, I think it's like every 3 days. So it's a birth death machine, right? So consciousness is rising from identification with the animal, the instinctual, the unconscious, the mortal, and being resurrected into the immortal, right? And the crossover point, the energy that allows this to happen is the energy of the heart or love. That's why Ramana Maharshi constantly referred back to the heart energy, right? The mind was secondary, right? It was the heart. The heart's the matter, the heart sutra, the heart of everything, This is the so. Hopefully, that's what you were looking for, Penny. Patricia in Vancouver. Hello, Patricia. Good to see you. Tatiana. Hello, everyone from Toronto. Happy to be here. I'm so much enjoying you talking. Thank you, dear GP. Oh, you're so welcome. Roberto, doing EFT like crazy, GP. I don't even know if it's working. It's been a strange feeling holiday. It's working. Yeah. Don't let your mind think it is, because the mind's always focused. See, your mind is focused primarily on the relief of symptoms. So it's judging everything in terms. Is it working? Is it working? Because it's staring at this. It's looking at a rock, waiting for the rock to change into something else. Right? Take your attention away from the rock. Just notice the tiniest, subtle little variations. Right? If you do that, if you're tapping in the way we did together in the session, right? Just tap, and then just tune in the tiniest little sensations, but make your inquiry into what's happening be about the energetic shifts you sense. Right? Even if the symptoms become even more pronounced, right? That's part of it. Say, oh, shifts have happened. Right? Okay. So you just stick with it. Believe me, it's working, because this all by itself communicates to the nervous system you are safe. And that environment will eventually convince the nervous system that it actually is. All righty. I need to take a quick break here because I'm dying of thirst and I have to get some water. And so I'll be right back. I'm going to leave my headset here. Patience. Ow, ow. My legs get stiff. As I was sitting here waiting for the water to get cold, I was thinking for Roberto, what we're really trying to do with EFT, remember, we're not trying to get rid of symptoms. We're trying to open up the whole energy system to see things differently. That's what this is all about. When it does, the symptoms become increasingly less important. which means we invest less energy in them. We don't pay as much attention to them. They don't grab mind share as much as they do. The stories that, wow, what this is, what's going to happen to me, begin to dissipate. And it's really very simple. All you're trying to do is create, or establish within yourself an inner sense of safety in any way that you possibly can, right? Every time you are trying to get rid of a symptom, anytime you're trying to get rid of a feeling, even in a subtle way, I'm just going to overcome it, I do this enough, and then the symptom will go away or the feeling will go away, you're actually enhancing it. You're actually empowering it because it's going to be more defended because you're trying to make it go away. So do exactly the opposite. Love it. Love the symptom. All right, I got the symptom. Be with it. It's there. That's the truth, right? It's a simple recognition of the truth. This is here. All right, I'm with it. This is what it is. And I'm just dropping all of my intention or my resistance to it, my aversion to it, and I'm just going to recognize the self-evident truth. It's here. And just let myself feel it. And you'll find a courage begins to arise, right? And a compassion. It won't seem like this terrible thing you have to get rid of. Right? It won't seem like this evil being trying to mess up your life. You'll begin to see it for what it really is, which is just a scared, wounded child, right? Trying to hold on to something to make itself feel safe. But if you give it the safety it's craving, right, it can't help but drop all the behaviors that it's been using to compensate for not feeling it. And that's really the way it works. Where's my, oh, it's there. Do I actually have this on? Yes, I do. And you're on, and green. Okay. So, very good, Roberto. G, I've been bothered with the fear of making mistakes at work. My coworkers talk about others who've made mistakes and made fun of them behind their backs. I realize it's passing thought and feeling because it doesn't exist a moment ago until I realized I have to work tomorrow. Right? Well, okay, well, that's just a trigger, right? I realize I have to work tomorrow. And then that fear of being talked about behind your back, right? Somebody else, of being belittled. Be with that fear, right? Okay. They're talking behind your back. Then what? Okay, fear. They're going to talk behind my back. In fact, they're talking about behind my back right now. They're all sitting in a pub somewhere, having a great conversation about you, about all the mistakes you've made. Okay, now what? Well, they're talking about me. What happens? Then what? If you do that, well, then they'll think less of me. Well, then what? They'll make jokes on my behalf. Okay, then what? Take the fear at its word. Say, okay, they did that. Yeah, I really don't want that to happen. Okay, they did. That's what they're going to do. Okay, now what? Will anything be different? Will anything change? Will there be a problem? Right? Your mind is turning it into something as if it was important. It was significant. Like, who cares? Right? But you really have to get the entire nervous system to the point where it sees, oh my God, who cares? Right? So what if they do? But what's the impact of them doing that? Nothing. Really follow it through and notice it isn't just that's a passing thought and feeling, right? The opportunity for you is when you see something as a passing thought and feeling, is that you put yourself in the proper relationship with it, right? It's passing, I'm not, right? And it's okay that this feeling is there. It's just okay that this particular kind of feeling, which is not a happy feeling or a pleasant feeling, it's okay that it's there. Great. Perfect. Let it be there. Such a freeing thing, right? And there'll be things that, because there's a fear there. Oh God, I got to work tomorrow. Oh my God, they're going to do it again. Okay, they're doing it again. Imagine them doing it. Even picture them sitting there, just ripping you to shreds, ripping you a new one, and just be okay. Now what? Really, just play it all the way through and see what happens. I'm curious. Michael G. Oh, Jay, you say, I'm still in training and I feel like quitting, but at the same time, I haven't given myself a chance. Yeah, don't make sure you're not quitting prematurely. I mean, you don't have to do it, right? Still in training. You don't have to do it. You can do something else. But oftentimes the training part is the hardest, right? It's more stress. We have to learn. We feel insecure because we don't really know it yet. The guys that have been around for a while, especially the guys, love to make fun of the newbies, right? They love to razz them, and give them a hard time, talk about them behind their backs and that sort of thing. It's kind of the way men are, right? So, don't be quick to step out of that. Step fully into it first. Completely embrace everything about it, right? And then if it's really not the right place for you, it'll become clear. Michael G., what is a soul? Are there many souls or only one? The I is the illusion, is the knower of the soul. The soul is a very popular word. Damn wire. It's been around for a long time. The meaning it has for most people and for our culture in general is the immortal part of me, right? Not immortal as in timeless, right? Because in the Abrahamic religions, the soul had a beginning, right? When this body was created, the soul was created and put inside, and at the end of this life cycle of the body, the soul will come out of the body and go off somewhere. So it's a very ephemeral view of an individual. As a matter of fact, most people even think of it as a body. They imagine heaven there with all the people they know, right? Even though the body that they know is laying back buried in the earth somewhere, don't really think about it all that much. So the soul is basically, well, it's kind of the best version of me. I've lost all the weight. I'm buff, or I'm totally hot. I'm young, right? That's the immortality we imagine. We certainly don't want to think that the soul is like 80 years old walking with a cane and I'm going to spend eternity like that. That wouldn't be very heavenly. So it's just the soul. What it actually is the small sense of I, the sense of a separate self, trying to imagine immortality. It can't fathom timelessness. It can't fathom always having existed because it's identified with the body, and the body hasn't always existed, right? I mean, it's, as I said before, it's constantly changing, right? There's parts of it dying right now, even as we speak. I mean, literally, in the few moments I said that sentence, literally millions of cells died and millions of new ones were reborn. So the life cycle of some of these cells is extremely short, right? And it's come back because they die and are born at different rates. So it's constantly going on. It's constantly happening. Right? What it is at its best, more water. What it is at its best is deep inside of us. We know we don't die. We know we're immortal, not just believe it, hope for it. We know it. And because that energy is there, but our minds and our sense of identity can't process it, we try to envision it as a form, like I'm going to continue. This personally, GP is going to continue, right? And it surfaces not just in the Christian tradition or the Jewish or Islam, where it's a soul that goes somewhere else. And the Christian could also go someplace for eternal condemnation. In the East, it's the idea of reincarnation, which is very popular here now. People talk about it a lot here, but when you hear people talk about it, they think of themselves as reincarnated, right? It's as if GP is going to come back as in another form and still be GP. Right? Again, it is the sense of identity trying to perpetuate itself. Right? The way to actually get to the one immortal soul, which is simply the sense of being, consciousness, awareness, it's just another word for the same thing, that which actually is to let go of the idea of being a person. Let go of the notion of there being a personal soul, any more than you're not a personal life, right? There's only life. And everything in this body and the function, every thought and every experience and every feeling is part of this unified functioning that we call life. So when I've let go of me as this individual form, this individual thing, there's no longer a soul. Right? I am not a soul. There's only the soul. Now, what is the soul? The sense of self, the sense of me, the immortality. That's consciousness. Soul, consciousness, same thing. Awareness. Your true nature, the true self, the I am. Right? The soul speaks to that which is the I am. I really exist. I'm something that exists and will always exist, and always has existed. But if I always have existed, right, then it's not GP, which is just the name given to this body after my parents had a night of fun. At least I hope it was fun. I hope they enjoyed it. And the same thing with people who talk about reincarnation. I said, okay, you had many, many lives, which means last life you were as convinced that that was who you are as you are now. Right? So what is it that goes from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime? What's that? Describe that to me. So now you have to describe existence, being, but not in terms of any form. Soul is a perfectly good word for that, if that's what you mean by it, right? But for most people, soul is a personal thing. It's my own personal being that is sustained. The ego does not want to let go of its of being, right? It wants to think that there's an immortality for me. I'm going to get to heaven. My name's going to be GP or Gregory, which it really is, right? I don't know how God's going to call me. Maybe he'll give me a new name, a nickname or something, right? But I'm still there and you're still there and we're still different, right? But that's not what heaven is at all. Heaven is the absence of separation. It's that pure love which is one. So soul, spirit, truth, love, beauty, reality, all different names for the same thing, that which is. And that's you, clearly, because you are and you are, right? Don't worry about the rest. That sense I am, absolutely present. The mind wants to say, was it here before? Is it here now? Yeah. What else do I know? It's here now. The mind wants to try to imagine an origin and imagine an end, or try to imagine not having an origin, not having an end. The mind can't do it. Leave it. What's the truth of right now? I am. Can I am ever become I am not? Thank you, Michael G. Andrew, perfect. Thanks. All the best. You're welcome. I don't exist, but I know that I am. Is that knowing also an illusion? That's also Michael G. I don't exist. Well, to say I don't exist, you have to exist, right? So when somebody says I don't exist, what is it that does not exist? We just take that all apart because obviously you do, right? Or you couldn't say I don't exist, right? It's kind of a prerequisite, right? So the whole spiritual inquiry is, well, okay, what actually does exist? What am I? What is this I that is aware of both existence and non-existence? What is that? That knowing that I am, did you create it? Is it an illusion, right? Is it an appearance of something else? Now, the sense I am, right? You could say it was an illusion, and that would be accurate. You could also say it's kind of the firstborn. It's a manifestation, right? But the illusion or not of it isn't really what's important, right? The sense I am is perceived. Now, for most of you, that sense I am, I want all of your attention there because that sense I am is the doorway to that which is even beyond that, right? So, but for you, Michael, that sense I am, right? Is it not perceived? It's very subtle, right? But it does have quality to it, doesn't it? Perceivable quality. Okay. If it's perceivable, however subtle it might be, there must be something there perceiving it. Even the sense I am couldn't happen unless you were. So prior to there being any experience of being, there must be being. And by prior, I don't mean in time, because they actually happening simultaneously all the time. But prior in the order of being, right? In primacy, right? Before I can even have a sense I am, know I am, a thought I am, I must be, right? That is the absolute. It is beyond any description. It is beyond any, it cannot be spoken. That is the Tao that cannot be spoken. So all your attention simply goes to everything, away from everything other than the sense I am. That is the last door. And in front of that, you even let go of the desire to be. This is the ultimate. This is the deeper meaning of death. I'm letting go of even the desire to be. And that's when the door opens, more or less. And something else goes even beyond. And that beyond is indescribable. Gone beyond, gone totally beyond. The Prajnaparamita, the ultimate mantra. Does that answer it for you? Michael G? Great question. Beautiful. Thank you, G. Thank you for helping us all. My pleasure. I love it. Beautiful answer to my question. Thanks, GB. You're welcome, Kiran. Ava, G, about allowing surrender. Is this like recognize this feeling or thought or emotion, like fear or situation? It seems to be uncomfortable, undesirable. This is only one of many manifestations of myself. So it's impossible to fight it away. Exactly. You've tried. We've all tried. I want to get rid of this feeling. Go away, feeling. Go away, feeling. Resistance is futile. Another Star Trek reference. So because there is only myself. I can look at myself consciously, just looking away. I'm looking at myself in the mirror. Nothing I can do with the current image in the mirror. Some comment on that, please. Beautiful. Absolutely right to the point. Yes. Well, if it's just an aspect of myself, right, why am I rejecting it? How can I reject it? Happy feeling, bad feeling. It's just an aspect of myself. I'm looking in the mirror. See, when we see it as bad feeling I've got to get rid of, our minds turn it into a separate entity. They make it into a thing. And now I'm possessed by this thing. We talk about gripped by fear, right? Okay, what's gripping me? There's a feeling in my body. That's it. There's a feeling here. My body is a feeling. That's all my body is a feeling. I don't even know if there's a body here. All I have is a series of feelings, which I call sensations because I think they're coming from a body. But I'm digressing. I feel a fear, a worry, anxiety, right? Okay, there it is. But the mind says, oh, I've got to get rid of it. The moment I say I've got to get rid of it, I have made it something other than me. I've projected on it a power over me. It has a grip on me. I've created the entire thing myself. Absorb it back. This is what is me, the outward pass where the heart just opens and lets the whole universe in. It's just nothing but myself. I totally embrace it. This is, matter of fact, you could even say that this is what consciousness wanted. It wanted to have experience. You wanted experience, right? Well, you can't have experience without contrast. You can't have light without dark. You can't have up without down. You can't have pleasure without pain. Because there'd be nothing, no reference for it. If there was nothing but pleasure, I wouldn't recognize it as pleasure. If the only color was blue, there'd be no color because there's no contrast. You can't have blue without something else to go, oh, that's red, that's blue. Right? And yet all the colors originate from this one invisible multiplicity of frequencies that you can't even, it's inconceivable. Right? So, yeah, we absorb all of it in love. Right? At that point, I realized I don't actually have an enemy. This is what Christ meant by love your enemies, right? Right? He wasn't just talking about, some guy in another country somewhere who doesn't like you, right? He's talking about, because he also said, our enemy is within our own house and amongst our own brethren. He's talking about that. Love him. Love that enemy. What happens if you love that feeling? Is there any suffering in love? If you love that feeling, you cannot possibly suffer. You can't, oh, I'm suffering it. What does that mean? I'm resisting it. I don't like it. Please go away. Right? It's like saying, I really don't like my finger. Please go away. Go away, please. And you walk, you're still there. It is just some, it's just part of the whole package of human existence, of experiencing. There is no experience without it. And there is no experience without the utterly silent, empty background against which it appears. You cannot hear music if you're in the middle of you've probably been in a shopping mall, right? Right. People are talking and it's loud and it's echoing, right? And they're piping in music, right? And you can hear, yeah, it's there somewhere. You have no idea what it is, what it sounds like, because it's just a cacophony. In order to hear it, what happens? You have to have silence. It appears on the silence. Well, in this case, what's the silence? The silence is our pure acceptance of it. Pure acceptance means I'm not judging it. I'm not creating a story about it. I'm not narrating it, right? I'm totally silent. The mind has nothing to say about it. It's totally silent, right? Which means it's just pure experience, which is exactly what consciousness wanted in the first place. Beautiful. Is that clear, Eva? Lovely, lovely, lovely. If it's not, you'll tell me. Hey, G, in Canada. Hello. Amakija. Amakija. Raspurin Esser, hello from Turkey. Amazing to be here again. Amazing to have you, sir. Ma'am. Raspurin. Think it's masculine. Don't know. Can't tell from the picture. Raspurin. That could be. I don't know. What the hell do I know? Sarah, Stephen Jourdain's grandfather was an architect in Art Nouveau and urbanism. His father was a painter and illustrator in modernism. Steve couldn't seem to harness his talent for writing. No, he couldn't. He couldn't harness it for anything. Although some of the stuff he's written, it's just, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it's very funny. He came from a very liberal atheist family, and they even thought he was a little bit nuts. All of a sudden, here's this spiritual kid, right? Who had no, like Ramana Maharshi, no interest in it whatsoever. But magnificent. It's a magnificent story. I recommend the book because it'll give you a completely fresh take on the whole enlightenment. You'll come out of the guru in the ochre robe with the heavenly look on his face, and into this guy who just drank wine and chain smoked and never never taught ever. It's beautifully and quite refreshing. It'll peel away some of the romanticism we have around awakening. Penny says, yes, the Kundalini, exactly. Thank you so much. Good. Glad I got it. Patricia, my experience includes the last 30 plus years of chronic illness. Sometimes it's difficult to allow it and stay in consciousness, in truth. I know the illness is the vehicle for my awakening consciousness, but it's hard to get that in the present distraction of the suffering. Help with that. Draw the distinction between the feeling, even the pain, and the suffering. Right? As you said, it's a vehicle for your awakening. That means you just don't endure it, right? If I endure it long enough, I'm going to awake. You use it in your inquiry. All right, this is what I'm experiencing, and I'm suffering about it. Right? Where's the suffering? I don't want this to be here. That's it. That's the whole of it. Surrender to it. It's here. Right? Self-evident. Right? And then you'll notice that feeling of trying to resist it. That's what you lay on the altar. Right? Because all feelings are you, are they not? Right? What I was saying earlier to Ava, it applies here. And I'm not saying that the pain will always go away and life is just going to be, roses and rainbows and dolphins, right? The reality is that there can be pain. If you read what Nisargadatta was talking, because towards the end of his life, he was dying of throat cancer because he chain smoked his whole life, never stopped, right? Even after in his awakening, he fully enlightened master, he kept smoking. He said, my body likes it. What do I care? But he would talk about being just this enormous pain, right? But for him, it was just something he was witnessing. There was no identification whatsoever, right? So his body would get weak and it wouldn't have all the energy it needed even to do a satsang. So sometimes he'd only be there for an hour and then he'd rest. But he said the body had to rest. It wasn't him. He had no identification with it whatsoever. And so it's just part of the functioning of the universe. So use that as the opportunity, right? Use that sense of pain as in Zen, they would say, meditate like your hair's on fire, right? The house is burning down. So an acute pain like that wants to bring your attention to the pain. So bring it to the pain. Give it completely your attention, but without story. If you're going to give it your complete attention, do it without resistance. Because resistance is trying to pull attention away from it, trying to reframe it, make it go away, do whatever I can. Now, of course, I assume after these years with it, that you have had it checked out, the body's been You've had it examined, what's going on. You've taken all the proper precautions, hopefully you eat right, and all of the things that we can do our best, to keep lubing the system, as it were, but beyond that, we say, okay, I am with what is here in this moment 100%, and I surrender all of my desire to get away from it. That is what it is asking of you. Take the invitation. Say, I accept. I'm coming to this party. This is where you'll really get your freedom. Eventually, all of the resistance will leave, and so will the suffering. The pain may as well, because it is, in fact, all a construct of the mind. But don't go there too soon. Right? This is one of the big mistakes that I feel like Joseph Goldsmith and the Course in Miracles and Neville Goddard and the whole New Age thing, which I was a big adherent of for a very long time. It's the mistake they make. The emphasis gets put on the physical manifestation of healing, rather than the inner transformation that first has to go into acceptance. And that acceptance is the death of the ego. That is what this is actually pointing at, not at having a perfectly healthy body and life and good finances and all of that. That's all well and good, right? That's not the point. And that's what all of the New Thought did, right? That's the mistake it made. Right? We want to die to even the desire to have a happy life. Whoa. Did he really say that? Yes, I did. Yeah. That's what Christ represented, the Garden of Gethsemane, the whole death and resurrection. The struggle he went through in the Garden of Gethsemane was giving up his life, giving up his mission, giving up his message, the possible misunderstanding of absolutely everything he did. He laid it all out. Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me, but not as I will, but as thy will. And he literally submitted. He died to it. He died in the Garden of Gethsemane. The cross was just a momentary thing. Hi, G. Makija, Arun, right? Yeah. I have a question about emotions. Recently, I was listening to a talk which put forth the idea that our feelings are a barometer of how accurate our perceptions are. Well, Patricia said, I lose the courage in the allowing. Don't worry. It's just imaginary. Every intention, every attempt. Don't worry. You haven't lost the courage. You're here. You're talking about it. You obviously haven't. It's still here. Anyway, question. Recently, I was listening to a talk put forth the idea that our feelings are a barometer of how accurate our perceptions are. When you see yourself in a way that is out of alignment with how Source sees you, you feel a negative emotion. Are emotions evolutionary mechanism for survival and how we engaged with our tribe? How can we best follow the guidance of our emotions? Thanks. Yes, what you're describing is the point of view taken by metaphysics, the law of attraction, and that sort of stuff. And there's truth in it. I'm not denying it. Obviously, the closer you get to the truth of yourself, the better you're going to feel, right? But we have to be careful, right? Because those same feelings can be quite deceptive, right? The feeling that the alcoholic gets when they take that drink, right, is a good feeling, isn't it? And it would seem as if, according to that definition, well, that's the right thing to do, right? So our feelings can get distorted. Now, feelings are far more accurate and close to truth than thoughts are. Thoughts are very far away. They can go all sorts of places that bear no resemblance to reality. Our emotions, on the other hand, are very responsive to this moment. But the way they respond may not actually be accurate because we've been trained to react to with different feelings in different circumstances. And that's a training that took place because of our tribe. So when I'm in a certain circumstance, I will have a certain feeling, right? But that feeling was being interpreted through the lens of our culture and the tribe and all of that, right? So my reaction to it may not actually be accurate. You know, in some religious traditions, you don't question the scripture. You do not allow yourself to have any thought of asking a question. That's regarded as doubt. It's not, but that's what it's regarded as. We can't let that in. So whenever a question comes up in their mind, there's fear, not and a real emotion, avoidance, right? Now that's not real, right? That's a programmed response. So you can't trust that, right? It isn't leading you to the truth. It's leading you away from it, right? So that fear, oh, I should go away from that. No, right? So this is where a whole different level of approach takes place. The non-dual approach recognizes feeling, is with feeling, and recognize the potential of feeling to indicate truth. Right? But it doesn't assume that it's true. There's another element within us. I call it, you can call it vision, you can call it consciousness, you can call it discrimination. It's a capacity we have to begin to discriminate, to see the truth of something, because something else has to recognize whether or not this feeling or this thought is true. Am I getting a true reading from it? So all of it goes together to make up our perception. And yes, the emotions are part of the whole survival mechanism. The survival, though, the way they were trained was completely based on your culture and your tribe and the various experiences you had. So you've got this, what really amounts to an arbitrary association with events and feelings. That's the programming. This happens, this is the reaction, right? And that will continue to happen. You'll think, well, this is the right thing. I should be afraid in this situation. I should go away. But as you well know, you're oftentimes afraid in situations, having a negative feeling about something that's actually positive. The very fact that you have that disproves the theory, right? Because according to that, oh, I should move away from that. Oh, I'm moving away from that. I feel better. When you know perfectly well, it's what you want. And of course, we struggle with that all the time because we're often afraid of things that are actually beneficial to us, that are helpful for our lives, right? So can those feelings be trusted? Obviously not. Something else needs to be there to start the discrimination. And the non-dual approach puts its attention there on our capacity to, the first thing we do is kind of step outside and we watch the emotions. We watch what they're doing, right? And then we look, we go, oh, this emotion is reacting in this way. And before, unconsciously, I would have just gone with it, right? But now I'm not. I'm going to stop for a second. And at that point, suddenly I'm able to be with otherwise an emotion which would want me to head off in a different direction. And then being with it, something begins to happen. A gap in the programming opens up. It isn't instantaneous anymore. And something else emerges, which is not a feeling, and that's peace. There's a sense of equanimity that arises. That is the true feeling. And it's more than a feeling, it's a thought feeling. It's you know what it is, right? It isn't just an emotion as a reaction. You are touching the absolute. You are touching perfection. You are touching reality, peace, equanimity, wisdom, compassion, right? That's not an emotion. Getting in touch with that is the wisdom that then re-educates the emotions and the thoughts and starts bringing it in line with this discriminating eye, which is the real meaning of the third eye and vision. It is discriminating, right? Just you can tell the difference. Something that's beautiful and something's ugly. How? There's nothing about our senses that says that's ugly and that's beautiful. What tells us that? You can see some of it's cultural. Oh, that's not good. I shouldn't do it, right? I think, well, wait a minute, it is beautiful, right? We can tell the difference between some pop singer, right? A Lady Gaga and Beethoven, right? There's clearly a difference, and it's not my opinion. It's not just a cultural bias, right? It's a different level of beauty that I am discriminating. I'm seeing a real truth. Seeing that truth gives me the power to discriminate and therefore reorganize, reprogram, reassess, reassemble the entire system. Actually, you don't have to reassemble it. It does it by itself because it'll naturally gravitate towards the higher light. How is that, Arun? How'd I do? Alessandra, hello to you. Jay, wow, G, I've never done something like that before. I imagine all the nasty possibilities that could arise from HR to the bottom rung. And you know what? Nothing is too serious. Isn't that amazing? It's like, oh, the big threat. But okay, what's the threat? And the mind will go, nobody's gonna like you. Okay, so nobody likes me. You'll get fired. Okay, I get fired. Then what? You won't have any money. Okay, I don't have any money. You live under a bridge. Okay, I live under a bridge. And you know what happens? You keep following it. You know where it ends up all the time? I'm going to die. Every single time. It is that fear of death projecting on every single instant. Bring it back to the fear of death. Okay. Kill me. Then what? No. Snuff you out of existence. Oblivion. You don't exist at all. Okay. Do it. It's the last power. The devil is now completely impotent. Because it can't actually snuff you out. Solar Flare. Hello from Edinburgh. Hello, Solar Flare. Ava, thank you, G. This looks clear and much more easy now. Your comments are always hopeful for me. Good, my great master, my great student. Does Solar Flare, does Atman come into this anywhere? What does it mean? Well, Atman is interpreted a variety of different ways. It's translated different ways. Usually in the West, we kind of equate it to soul, my Atman. But Nisargadatta referred to the para Atman, which the ultimate self. It's also, you could use the word for self. And the looked at through the eyes of the jiva, it's the personal self, which is exactly the same as the Western idea of the personal soul, right? And just like I took the personal soul and I just basically took away all the personhood of it, and you got to pure being, the sense of reality, that which actually is, the Atman is the same, right? In taking away all the person, the jiva part of it, the mukti part of it emerges, and suddenly now you have what Nisargadatta called the para Atman, the beyond Atman, the ultimate Atman. He also referred to the para Brahman, that which is beyond all form, the true and only self. And the mission of spirituality is for us to lay down the personal sense of Atman, to become the para Atman, to embrace the para Atman. Does that help? Could you spell his name and the name of the book? A little bit earlier, I can't remember exactly. There it is. Stephen, Stephen, Jourdain, Jourdain. The name of the book is Radical Awakening, and it's conversations with, and I can't remember the guy's name, who actually did the interviews and put the book together. Okay, I'm reaching the end here, which is good. Solar flare. Oh, got that one. Spelled the name. Patricia, thank you so much, dear G. Great for your expression of the truth. I'm engaged in surrendering, and yes, I see it's ultimate death of the ego that is underway. That's what we're actually afraid of, right? As I was just doing with Jay, right? Keep following it back. Right? What happens then? What happens then? What happens then? What happens then? And then what? And then what? And then what? And you will ultimately get to the fear of death. What happens if I die? And the ultimate surrender, which Christ illustrated so perfectly, was a surrender to your own death. Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit. It is done. So stirring. Michael G., thank you very much for your wonderful answer. Much love from Germany. Oh, thank you, Michael. Yes, thanks, Solar Flare. Yes, wonderful, perfect. I have exhausted the queue, so I can now just kind of let life happen in a different way. All right, everybody. I love you all, love you all, love you all. Until next time, namaste.